Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hive. We get some emojis. Yes, excellent. I am your guest host, Bulletproof1406. I am hosting today because Vivian is on vacation. Just to give you a bit of a background about me and what we'll be discussing in today's show, I am a new VR streamer. I've been gaming my whole life, and I feel like VR is the natural evolution of gaming. Recently, I've been helping out with the Hive behind the scenes, and I've been able to meet some amazing people, which is the exact reason I started doing this. On today's show, I'm excited to discuss Starblazer. It's a new VR RTS game available on Steam. With me today, I have Brandon and Alexander, the creative minds behind this wonderful game. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, excited to have you guys on.
Yep.
So,
I'm
why don't we get...
Alexander. Oh,
Yep.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Alexander. I'm the lead developer for Starblazer, so all of the coding and the art development, I work on that. And then Brandon?
Yeah, and I'm Brandon. I do everything that is not coding and art direction. So I do marketing, but I would quote that because we have a lack of marketing. I do most of the community management, deal with most of the emails, and do the testing and any of the user experience stuff that comes with Starblazer.
He also has most of the best ideas, but I try not to let that get to his head.
It's important, right, to keep level-headed during this, right?
Yeah.
So, did you guys both come from a software development background? Like, what made you kind of get into the gaming industry?
We've both worked in engineering fields before. That's how we at least first met each other. I started from a software background probably in middle school. I just found an interest in programming on my own, and then the day I discovered you can make your own video games by programming, I was beyond excited, as any middle schooler would be. So, been working on games since then.
Do you remember the first game you developed?
Yes, I do. It was this little 8-bit, you could almost call it an RPG, but it was more of a puzzle game where you were a villager and you're trying to escape these monsters, and every step you took, the monsters moved closer, so you had to outsmart them and make them crash into little campfires. First game ever made.
Actually, oddly enough, that actually sounds really interesting and a really good app for like a MOBA.
Maybe I should dig it up.
Yeah, maybe we should ship that.
How about yourself there, Brandon?
Yeah, so I actually was a therapist, and then I was like, this is really too hard for me, and went back to school and actually went to school for cognitive psychology, and then kind of found my way into the software world from that.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I actually really wanted to work at NASA, so I moved all the way to Houston to, interview with them. But yeah, so ended up in software instead.
You're kind of in space right now.
Yeah, so. You're right. There we go.
Dream come true, right?
Brandon was the VR enthusiast who first got me into it. We were best friends at the time, but he had a VR headset, and it was in playing with that with him, I was like, this is amazing. This is the future. And then, of course, I went to develop for it. But
so scrap everything else, right to VR. Gotta create something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just gotta
so, what made you want to make an RTS game?
Good question. Yeah, when we first got started, we knew we wanted to develop in VR. However, when we looked at the VR market, we felt that a lot of what was out there were more along the lines of demos, or they were games that had a very short replay value. They're cool experiences, but they didn't last long. And we wanted to create something that brings some of the long-lasting replay elements that we expect from a lot of other video games, but in the VR space. And when we thought about what it would be like to command a fleet of ships in virtual reality space, we thought, this is perfect. This is what we need to do.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
definitely had we had a philosophy where we wanted to make a game that could only play in VR, and I mean, we still polish our game all the time to make it feel like that. But we feel like we went into the space going, we want to make a game that makes people want to buy VRs, and that's our dream, that's our hope for it. We think it's a very unique space, and there's a lot of stuff that hasn't actually been done in it yet. And so when we made the RTS, we were like, we hadn't seen an RTS before in VR. And I actually was a huge StarCraft fan, so I was like, it'd be so cool to just like play with ships in space and have it going real time, and what would that look like? And so that's what inspired us to actually make Starblazer.
I can agree more, and you know, I'm a Zerg player all the way, so
Yeah,
I get the inspiration. Yeah. So why don't we actually actually take a look at the game? We can actually take a look at the trailer you guys got for it.
Great, thanks.
I love it. That looks amazing. What do you guys think?
Thank you.
Round of applause. Fantastic stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how many like different types of ships do you guys have? Like what was kind of the thinking behind it? Too many and it's too complicated, too little, and then it's not that interesting, right?
Yeah, there are currently 7 different ship types, and part of what we wanted to create was almost space chess is the goal. And the reason I say that is we didn't want too many units. You know, we didn't want massive fleets battling against each other. Not just because the performance would choke in VR, but also because we're very interested in that unit to unit interaction and creating those checks and balances of, you know, if you have very specific unit types, almost like you're playing chess, you know, what does that look like? How's that interaction? And we felt the best strategy comes from being carefully selective about which units you're using rather than sending like a whole army of ships in.
Yeah, that
And
makes sense.
And of course, there's different types of abilities and different ways to balance the ships.
Yeah, from what I was able to play, having the different abilities between ships definitely added an extra level of complexity, which I thought would be great because you're going to see players, especially because you're in a whole VR world, come up with interesting kind of ideas of attack methods and such, trying to attack other players. Having said that, though, RTS games have normally been like a desktop-focused kind of game. Like, how hard was it to actually transition it into VR?
Alex, I'll take this one.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a good question. So actually, me and Alex probably have to strip out stuff every month because of how overwhelming VR can be and how overwhelming an RTS feels. So there's actually been a lot of coding that we have removed from the game because we get users into it and it's just way too overwhelming. And so we're just like, we have to cut it. We have to keep it more simplistic because there's just so much going on in the game in an RTS. And so people can lose track or feel stressed out, and that's not what we want. So we're trying to, we constantly check ourselves to make sure like, hey, does this feel like an RTS, but still, is it still playable where you can actually have fun and not be stressed out playing it?
Yeah. No, I think that's perfect. I think the key for us has been actually simplify, which for a strategy game, you wouldn't think that's something you want to do. Obviously, if somebody's going to play a strategy game, they want something that they can really put some thought behind and strategize with. And we still think you can do that even in a simplified fashion. Sort of a easy to play, difficult to master is what we're going for.
Nice, yeah, and that's exactly what you kind of be looking for, especially because RTS games are kind of rare in the VR spectrum. So, you
Yeah.
kind of want to define it from a simplicity standpoint, and then expand upon that. So, I saw that there was like customization of ships and such. So, I assume if I wanted to create like a purple death fleet, I could.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, do we have a screenshot of the fleet builder? Should be the one with like all the ships in a row. But there's a big part of the strategy is when you design your fleet from the very beginning. And you can go in with different types of fleet layouts. Yeah, here, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And so you can see here on this console, there's the different ship types that you can select. And as you create your starting fleet, even before you've begun the game, that's where your strategy starts to take place. Because where you group the ships, how you're going to have them defend each other, where they're going to start, that plays a big part into it. And then of course, we all love to customize. So right now you can change the color palette, all the different highlights and base colors, and of course in the future we'd look at other skin options and things we can do to customize.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely excited to create something like that.
Right.
I think it adds an extra personal element to it, and then you feel more attached to your actual fleet. So I think it's a great idea to include that.
It's always fun to see the different ways that people play the game too. If they're over-indexing on snipers or if they prefer the bruisers, the more tank-like ships. I always love to see the different ways people strategize.
Oh yeah, and that there's people out there like crunching the numbers on, oh, this is the best fleet combo you can have of X number of this unit with this at this range, and go from there.
Yeah, we actually had a really cool situation happen. We were at PAX South, and we had someone who didn't have a VR but came and played, and he's like a real competitive gamer. And he came and we were like, you can't beat our hard AI. And he literally went home that night and thought about every single fleet and every single like combinations of stuff he could do. He came back the next day and actually beat it, and we were like, wow, that's actually very impressive.
Yeah.
So that made us go back to the drawing board and like, yeah. So yeah, it made us go back to the drawing board. Like, all right, we have to buff it up. We have to make the AI a little bit harder.
Yeah.
So
but it was cool.
So speaking of AI, I always imagine that's got to be one of the hardest parts of making a game, because how do you make it challenging so it's competitive but not impossible?
That's a great question.
Absolutely. Making the AI was one of the most fun aspects of the game for me, because the goal of a truly hard AI opponent should be that it's a replica of like a smarter, faster moving human. And what I mean by that is a lot of times when you play a video game, their version of hard means you get less health and the enemy does more damage. And honestly, as a player, I've always felt that's pretty cheap. I
absolutely hate it.
Yeah. It's like, well, that's not fair. Is that really a challenge? I guess, but it's not a fun one.
Yeah. So Civ 6 is terrible for that, like the deity level or whatever, and it doesn't make any sense. Yeah, it's not more challenging. It's just
Need
unfair.
For speed, the cars can catch up to me. Are you kidding? Come on.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Right. So the goal for me when I was designing the AI is I wanted to make it more realistic challenging. So it makes tactical decisions, such as on the harder AI modes, the fleet design. It's going to be more strategic about pairing up the ships that, hide its flagship and make it invisible. But then also in the real-time gameplay, the AI is programmed to make decisions faster, the harder the difficulty. And so in the easier modes, you might feel like you're battling somebody who's taking their time with decisions, just like you might be when you first start the game. But in the harder game modes, the AI is making very fast decisions. It's building, it's moving the ships, still realistically, and there's no artificial buffs. It's all about the strategy.
That's a great idea, actually, because then it's like facing another player who is just faster at making a decision than you. So
exactly.
So it actually helps you improve. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. And there's one more element to it. So we also know like a lot of RTS games have materials that you have to mine for to build ships. Our resource in the game is actually time. So the longer the map goes, especially against the AI, the less likely you are to win, because they will be on top of making decisions, and just there's so much going on in this game where you'll forget. You'll forget to go build a ship. You'll forget to send a ship. But the AI, the harder it gets, will not forget these things. So it's really cool to have that as like, that's the thing. You're just racing against the clock to actually win against the enemy team.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. So was this the most challenging aspect of creating the game, or was there anything else that was kind of extremely difficult in creating it?
I think the most challenging has been performance. I mean, this is the first production game that we've taken and really put on the market. And in hindsight, maybe I should have started with something other than VR, but hey, I'm loving it.
Go big or go home, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. You know, if you're going to go for it, go big.
Yeah.
But VR is very performance intensive. And so I think the day we launched the game on Steam, it was crashing all over the place, right? Things we didn't know, so we put it out there and, you know, instantly got fixes and patches as soon as possible. But that's been the learning curve for me.
Yeah. And that in itself is actually very impressive, considering that it's just the two of you working on this, right? So to be able to turn it around and get it up to performance ready with a small sample size to develop on that, that's great. Like that's kudos to you guys for doing that. Excellent job.
The funniest thing is Alexander has a really nice developer computer. So a lot of the crashing we didn't realize until less performant PCs started hitting the game, and so we were like, oh, we were totally gonna miss that because his computer can run like these really intense battles, and so we had to go back to the drawing board pretty quick. Like we did not catch this fast enough.
Like half the number of units that someone can have in their fleet or something like that, just to increase performance.
Yeah. Right.
I'm sure it's hard.
We can't hold any textures.
Yeah.
You learn
something like it's something like you got to try and stay within that minimum spec that they give you for VR, and I would find that pretty hard to actually make a game that can work within that.
Yeah, but people are going to play it that are using that, so
yeah,
we do what we can.
Yeah. So what's on the roadmap for the game? You guys have launched. You fixed the opening issues. What's next?
Yeah, so we'll continue to work on performance. I mean, I think that's key, and until it's completely seamless, I'm going to continue to work on that, as well as we're bringing in some new maps. So we're publishing a patch at the end of the week that's going to bring in a new like indoor close quarters kind of map. And then the big milestones for us then are this summer, I'm going to finish up development on the multiplayer. So Brandon and I have played it. We have a working build, but really getting that to scale is going to take a few months' time. So I'm going to finish that up. And then at the end of that, in the fall, we'll look to port to the other headsets. Because right now we're on HTC Vive, but then we'll look to take it to Oculus and mixed reality and PS4 VR.
Yeah, nice. I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
Once you get the multiplayer kind of up and running and it's stable, do you guys have any idea that if you will be going to the esports community? I mean, one of the reasons why you love StarCraft 2 was the hype around it and the players playing it, right?
Yeah, we totally see Starblazer being an esports game. Like we went in going, we wanna take a VR game and make it an amazing esports game. So we're super excited. Like we envision it all the time, just like two people battling it out on a stage, playing Starblazer, just manipulating ships and just going at it. We're so excited, and like Alex said, we just got to get to scale, and then everyone will be able to kind of challenge who they want.
Mm-hmm. And I can't wait. I think that you're right. Based on what I saw from the gameplay and playing as much as I could, I think it totally could be.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Considering where you guys started and where you're kind of at now, has it kind of come together to what you envisioned it, or is this just like the beginning? You expect you want to continue moving this forward for years to come, kind of thing?
I think that's been one of the most rewarding parts. Is it really hit us the last convention we went to, PAX South, because we had people coming up to us and they were saying, I haven't seen anything like this in VR, and people saying, I'm going to go buy a Vive so that I can play this. I mean, that's beyond humbling as a developer.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what we wanted from the beginning. That was the goal we set out to do. And then when you start to hear people say the things that you dream about, that you want people to have fun with and enjoy with your game, I mean, that's when it starts to become reality, and it's really exciting. So yeah, in a lot of ways, it's just getting started, but on the other hand, it's on the right path of fulfilling everything we set out to do.
Nice.
And there's still a ton of stuff we're learning. You know, like this is our first game that we launched, and there's like you know, like we went to Reddit and there's like this huge list of like stuff you should do as an indie gamer, and that list is great if you made like a game that's not VR. So there's like a whole bunch of learning we've had to do. Like VR is a very different space, and which we love. It's a really challenging and amazing experience, and I think that's the funnest part that we've had is we've only been out 2 months, I think. So I mean, we've been working on it for 2 years. So we're just learning constantly, I think.
Yeah, so it's a lot of personal development on top of an actual product development. So that's great.
Definitely.
Yeah. And you guys plan to expand beyond U2 at one point? I'm sure it must be tough to shoulder all the load right now.
Yeah, no, I love the idea of that. Especially, I think once we get to more of, if we're going to bring in customization of skins and other fun experiences like that, then especially it makes sense to expand the development team so we can enable more cool content for the players.
Yeah, and another thing that's been kind of tricky is like we've been doing more conventions now, and we've been doing more like social outreach. So it's the more that he gets off development, the less it takes us more time to publish updates. So we've been we cannot wait till we can afford more people.
Yeah, I would be happy to afford just being able to do this full time too.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's like working a regular job and then having to do this on the side on top, right?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Very little sleep.
Oh. All right, so I'd actually like to ask the audience to see if they have any questions.
Totally.
All right, I think I see one. I got user.
Yes, we're over here.
Hi, user. How's it going?
Hi, user.
Yeah. So my question is that you guys discussed. Actually, I have two questions. My first question is you guys discussed the AI within this game and how you made it fair. Can you go maybe a little bit more into the details, like maybe the computer science details of how you were able to implement this and make it kind of play on a level playing field with the player? And my second question is how many players play this game?
Okay. Yeah, let me answer the first question. So there were a number of things we did to make the AI very fair. At the beginning, the first step is setting the boundaries of what the AI should and should not do. Some things that the AI should not do is its ships should not move any faster than the main player's ships, right? That's not fair. That's an element of the game. Same as the same limitations. It can't build ships any faster than the player can. It can't build a larger fleet than the player can. And so all the boundaries that we would set on an in-game player, we make the AI abide by too. That's only fair. But now, how do we train it so it's actually difficult? One of the things is all the maps are trained, or basically help the AI out with this neural network of specific points on the map that advise it to where it can set up ambushes, where it can hide its flagship, where it can charge the enemy fleet, and then it'll run optimization algorithms to determine what the shortest path is. Dijkstra's algorithm, I'm sure you're familiar with, since you mentioned computer science. But so things like that, it'll do that pathfinding to find the shortest distance, and then also set up in different parts of the map. And so it's doing all those things. Then, as we mentioned on the earlier part, one of the key differentiators of what makes a smart AI is how fast it can decide these things. Because a lot of them are predetermined, it's easy for it to figure it out, but we set a limitation on its decision making. So if you're battling an easy AI, I'm putting in virtual limits on how fast it can change ship commands, meaning that it'll be slower to react to your actions as a player. Whereas, of course, the harder AI, it's going to react very quickly to different changes that you make. And it's pretty fun to watch because Sometimes it does feel like the AI is very fluid as a player because you can see where it's going one way and then it's changing mind with different ships on the map. Yep. And as for how many players, I don't know. I haven't checked it in a while.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for the question. All right, we have Alex. Do I have an Alex here?
Hey, Alex.
Hey, Alex.
Hey. So, my question was, will this be available to the Oculus Quest when it gets released?
Ooh, good question.
So the what?
That is a good question. It's the Oculus Quest. I think they just announced it, I think yesterday, right?
Oh, gotcha.
No, that's, I know what you're talking about. That's
That's the Rift S.
new Vive, or Rift S, yeah.
Yeah, that's the Rift S. The Quest is the standalone one without a PC.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. So as Alexander kind of said, right now we just got to make it polished on what we currently have on the current Vive before kind of porting over to other things. It's definitely, like, it's on our radar, but right now we just kind of want to make sure we built a game where we can have multiplayer, has some more maps, has some more playability, and feels more polished before porting over to these other headsets. But it's definitely on our radar. It just won't be until probably, the second half of coming up. But
And I think one of the things I'll add is when we talked about simplifying the controls, and part of that was intentional so that it could play really well across other types of headsets, even the ones, we're talking like Oculus Go or, the different ones that have just like the one controller, like Google's, for instance. Honestly, most of it you could play with one controller, and that'd be a pretty easy switch to make. And so we did that intentionally so that it's a very easy experience to translate from one to the other when we get there.
And that makes sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Does anyone else have a question? Anyone else? I actually had a couple that I thought of. So if you two were facing each other in Starblazer, who would win?
Definitely Brandon.
yeah, so Alexander spends the most time making the code, but I definitely spend the most time playing the game because I'm the one testing the code and checking it in, so it'd be too easy.
Yeah.
Ooh, too easy.
Well, but I get satisfaction in the fact knowing that I programmed the AI that can still kick his butt.
That is true.
All right, and final question. Considering that it is just two of you, and you guys have to prioritize responsibilities, how do you guys kind of come to a decision about what you should prioritize when it comes to development?
Yeah, that's a bit of a process. Sometimes we don't always agree what's the biggest priority.
Yeah, I have this issue sometimes where I get hung up on like silly things. Like we have a lobby with like objects you can move around, and sometimes I'm like, we really need water to come out of the cups. Like it'll be very immersive. And Alexander has like this backlog of bugs, and he's like, is that really the thing we need to build right now? And I'm just like, yeah, come on, that makes so much sense. I think the funniest one we ever had is during PAX South, we had this little girl come up and she's like, I want an easel in your game where you can like draw whatever you want. And so I was like, Alexander, you need to put this easel in. This little girl, you're going to let this little girl down if you don't. And he spent the next like 3 hours trying to put this easel in, and it kept breaking the game. And I was like, I should not have asked him to do this.
Yeah, so
I
he
know.
guilts me into putting this whiteboard in the game because some little girl asked for it. And then he has to like watch painfully, and he's cringing, and I'm streaming on Twitch too as I'm trying to develop this thing, and for whatever reason this whiteboard keeps crashing the game. And trust me, whiteboard is not essential to the gameplay. So he's like, okay, maybe I made a wrong call there.
Yeah.
Number one review on Steam is now going to be, where's the easel, right? Like,
Yeah.
Oh gosh, everybody in here is going to
Better than some of the reviews.
Where's the whiteboard?
Yeah.
Where's the whiteboard?
Yep.
All right. if there's no more questions, I'd like to talk about what's going to be on the next show, The Hive. All right, so Vivian is back. Yay, emojis. Yay. She'll be featuring, and I'm going to butcher the name, Liminal VR. So make sure to put that event in your calendar, and I hope you can all welcome back Vivian as she returns to the Hive. All right, thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you guys really appreciated the show. Thank you for Brandon and Alexander for sharing with us some insight into Starblazer, and I hope you guys try it out. It is an awesome game.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we have a free demo. Go download it. Go play it. Let us know. We're always open to feedback. We want to improve this. So, yeah, go check it out.
Yeah, and we'll be at PAX East. So if anybody's going there, definitely
be at PAX East. Yeah. We'll give you a free shirt if you're like, yeah, we saw you on the Hive.
Ooh, a free shirt.
Sure.
Free shirt.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us today. Stick around if you guys have any questions. We'll be hanging back for a bit. So if you guys want to talk with the developers a bit more, let us know.